Welcome. Let me introduce, on my left is Ute Burkhardt from FAN, Julia Zahariewicz from the Gärtnergasse, Wolfgang Obermeier from Hoast, Laura Windhager from Galerie Gianni Manhattan, and Fernando Mezquita from Schneiderei. And we will start just as we did with other panels with the short introduction, and I would like you to maybe also try to answer the question about the desire, about why are you doing the space that you're doing.
Should I start?
Yes, Ute, if you would like to start.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation to this very interesting topic. First, I have to not apologize my very bad English, but I will try my best. I'm running this non-profit exhibition space FAN together with a lot of people from different disciplines. FAN was founded 2014 together with Amer Abbas. We started, let's say, accidentally working together on theoretical topics, and in one moment we said maybe it's a good idea to try to realize this stuff. FAN organizes exhibitions, interdisciplinary projects focused on the reimagining of art in the social context and the vision of contemporary urban culture. What you see, maybe you can start this small video. This was done by Virgil Wiedrich for the presentation of a diploma from Jintao. She's from the art and science class, I don't know how to say that in English, and it shows, it's showing nothing.
The connection is not loading.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
no problem. Somehow it should show what are we working on. It's a kind of trying to disturb the existing borders from different point of views. This topic today remembers me to a scene of the film Stranger Than Paradise by Jim Jarmusch, where Willie and Eddie go to see Eva in Cleveland. This scene shows an icy wasteland, and Eddie says to Willie, quoting, "You know, it's funny, you come to someplace new and everything looks just the same." I think it's somehow something what we are all doing, these off spaces and artist run spaces, it seems like it's the same somehow. Yeah, maybe that's for the first moment.
Thank you.
Everything.
Julia?
Hi, I'm Julia, and I'm here in the name of Gärtnergasse. Gärtnergasse is a space that started in April 2016. And it's a space that, that was initially, there were 5 people that were part of the space, and then 3 out of these 5 people are no longer part, and there are 2 other people, and so the current people that run the space are Julia Znoi, Philipp Friedrich, Eugen Wist, and me. And the way the space has been structured from the beginning and also now is that so let's talk about now so we don't make it too confusing, but right now, so there are the 4 of us, and we have 3 curatorial units, so to say. So one is Eugen, one is Philipp, and one is Julia Znoi and me, called Handbag. And the way we organize it is that we invite artists as independent units, and so when one of the units invites somebody, the others that are involved are sort of helping out and being part of the space. But in this way, we have this sort of yeah, like not like a heterogeneous, I don't know how to say this word in English, program. And also we have this thing that like, it's not all of us deciding on one show, but we have like each unit decides for an artist, and we don't really interfere with these decisions. And this is something that came to be as more of like an organizational decision, but works out pretty well. And I think also like works out pretty well in the sense that like it's relatively easy for us to work like this, but it also works well because the program's also somehow not very, like it's not one focus or topic we're following, which I think it's nice for what we, like as this like young artist ran space, we're all still either students or like very freshly finished school. So yeah, and then basically we mainly concentrate on solo shows. We've had one duo show so far, and we've also, which is maybe, yeah, somehow, I think that's something that's a little bit like special, if I can say. And special, if I can say. I mean, I don't want to say special. It sounds so like as if it's like nobody thought about this, but it is something that like is kind of something that is the fact that we mainly do these things. Yeah, we invite people from Vienna and like international artists. We don't have like a preference based on where they live. It's mainly based on the art they make. And yeah, I think this is like fine for the beginning.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Wolfgang Obermeier. I'm here for Host, and we are a young space. Only recently opened, like in March this year, so we haven't done so many venues so far. We are like two people. The other one is here, Katharina Shapira Obermeier. She's my partner. We both have our studios also next to the space, and in the second district, quite around the corner of the Carmelite Market. And we both see this space as a kind of extension of our artistic praxis. We both have been active in different curatorial projects before. Ekaterina, she was, for example, she was one of the curators of the Soviet Modernism exhibition in the Architecture Center. And we both are active members, partly sometimes active of a space of a Kunstverein in Nürnberg called Kunstbunker Nürnberg. We curated there different exhibitions since 2000, and I especially was active during the last couple of years, also as a member of the Schneiderei, which is represented by Fernando now. And yeah, we took our new studio as an opportunity. We had one empty space, like to start there doing things quite related also to social issues, and so not only about fine art, and also with a kind of performative approach, not performance artist in a narrow sense, but more like different formats that could be performative. Like what you see here, for example, we have also like an election day, not only the Kunsthalle. It's a kind of gathering to watch the elections tomorrow, which is organized by Alice Durst. And as you can see, we also have no problems with like kind of trashy things or awkward formats. And what we did so far was also quite mixed and experimental, different formats. And in the future, we will be more concentrated on creating formats as tools for artists, like different exhibition formats, or also being a place for other associations that we will host there if we like the program, and if they're more like a nomad association with no fixed space. Yeah, that was my introduction.
Thank you.
I'm Laura, and I'm the founder and director of Gianni Manhattan, which is a commercial gallery located in the 3rd district and also functions as a publishing house for artist writings. I think I might be some kind of like synergy almost of what was said, because for a very long time I wasn't sure whether I wanted to open a project space or a gallery, and what then won me over was actually the aspect of working with artists for a long time, of what Natalie also said earlier, this idea of growing together, of developing things together. And ideally, I would like to find a format that combines, on one hand, economic stability for both my artists and me as a gallerist, because a lot what has been mentioned before was precarity. Sorry. Okay, that's better. So precarity, is that better? Yeah, okay. This aspect of precarity has been, came up a lot of times. So on one hand, Gianni Manhattan is there as an economic foundation for my artists, but also as a site of experimentation. And yeah, I was told to keep it short, so I didn't prepare a lot. I hope that's okay for the beginning.
Hi, I'm Fernando Mezquita. I started together with Cornelia Auinger the Schneiderei project. Our artists association is called See You Next Thursday, and as an extension, Schneiderei is a project of this art association, and mainly we are concentrated in collaborative projects and approaches, and we basically would like and intend to have a moment where this collaborative approach can be extended and developed, and I think that basically is where our project is concentrated from the beginning. Since 2012, we are trying to give this space this approach. And now the last 2 years we are engaging ourselves in a more lab approach, where we try to combine and try to see what is going on in Vienna with other off spaces, something that will happen very soon in our program. And we would like to see the various niches in Vienna, different districts where different off spaces are operating, and we would like to concentrate and move within our project to those days where things are happening in those districts. And it's basically, let's say, a collaborative in our exhibition approach, and we would like to open that door to get connected with other off spaces in other areas of Vienna, basically.
Thank you. And maybe to pick up on that thought, and also on the question that was present in the previous panel, I wanted to ask you if there is, in your opinion, a need for more connectivity within the local art scene, or maybe a need for more connectivity between the different scenes, and how could that be possible? Like, how could that work?
It's for us, Schneiderei. It's an experimental project now. We didn't start yet with that program, though we will do it in January, starting in January. Our intent is that we really realize that there's a good amount of project spaces in Vienna, and they are concentrated in several districts, and we are also looking to that movement, and we would like to somehow to facilitate that communication between spaces, and we as an off space also facilitating that communication between spaces within Vienna. And it's still an experiment. We didn't try it.
So would it be kind of like a Uber off space, or an off space that is kind of would it be still an off space then, or would it then become something different?
Let's say it will be an extension of our program, and focusing in the need somehow to bring that so-called underground activity. And we know that each one of us somehow we work a little bit within ourselves, within our structures, and bringing those structures a little bit more into the surface, where we can interconnect those space itself within those districts. We are trying to develop that project.
Okay.
I think there's really a strong need of connecting the different initiatives, and I'm happy that Schneiderei wants to take over the role now, because so far nobody wanted to take over the work, like connecting the spaces, and it could be done in I think at first in a very simple, with maybe some simple online tools or sharing equipment, or like Andrea said, like having a Stammtisch, for example. And it's a little bit strange because in other cities this happened sometimes already, to that something that is now organized by the Kunsthalle is organized by the spaces themselves, like to make a forum and have maybe also like a public exchange. And it's a little bit a pity that there is that it didn't happen, and there's also no real awareness of the history of the spaces in Vienna. I never found anything about like the history of independent art spaces in Vienna, or somebody's researching that. And I think that would create also some certain kind of awareness that we like all sitting in the same pond or in the same boat. Yeah.
Yes,
I believe, or we believe, that running an off space like FAN or all the others, it's a political attitude, and it's a position. And I think to be visible in a city, to be visible in an urban context, that's really something. I don't know. I'm not so sure if it's necessary to put more effort on more connectivity or something like that. I would like to have, let's have more of these public spaces.
Well, I can only speak for galleries, or for my gallery here, but I think especially for young galleries, the notion of interconnectivity is crucial, because I don't think that the old model of elbows out and I'm going to push through is working. I really strongly believe that in order to survive, we need to join resources, collectors, artists, and also in that sense also generate attention and sort of like shine a light on Vienna as a cultural spot and on the practices that are happening here. And the city is full of great artists, and I think it's about time that people notice this. And I'm also like not opposed towards, for example, like exchanging with off spaces, with artist-run spaces, with small institutions, with bigger institutions like we're doing now, because I think we can all learn from each other. And yeah, so I think it's, for young galleries, it's absolutely crucial.
But what I'm interested in is why do artists choose off spaces or artist-run spaces, and why they choose institutes, let's say, like that, like Kunsthalle or something like that. Is this just a question of desire, which desire opens the space, or are these artist-run spaces just like increasing the area of the possibility of showing art? What do you think about it? I don't know if it's if you can understand what I mean.
Sure, I know what you mean. No, actually.
From, let's say, maybe like that, we are all driven somehow to do that. We are all in a precarious situation, the artists and the founders and the curators and all these people. So why are we doing that?
I'm not an artist, so I can't answer that, but I can only answer why I'm doing what I'm doing as a gallerist, which is, I mentioned before, I mean, the idea of a gallery is obviously that you sell work, but which, again, is an ideal scenario, but you also have to acknowledge that I think it's been mentioned over and over again that borders are blurring, and what I'm trying to do at Gianni Manhattan is leave artists. I'm saying, like, this is your playground, do with it what you want. Here's a production fee, do what you want. And I'm there as a to talk to, and I'm there if someone wants my advice, but I'm not there to tell someone, no, you can't put that work in there because I can't sell it. So I want to have a challenging program, I want to have a discursive program, but I equally it's been mentioned so many times that a lot of project spaces can barely pay their rent. I hope that by creating like a money exchange, that money flows, that you are able to pay fees, you are able to pay at least a production budget, even if you don't sell sometimes, and it happens. I mean, it's a fact that not every show sells out, and I think there's also an honesty and a transparency that is needed, because you have artists that come and they're super disappointed, they're like, oh, but my work didn't sell. I'm like, I know, and it happens, and no one talks about it. And but at least it creates some kind of, you give artists some freedom by saying, at least I can pay you the production, and we do a show together that isn't restrictive.
But how are you signing or creating your borders? Because you told me that the artists will have the freedom to do whatever they want, and you're designing a kind of playground. Mm-hmm. And how are you doing that? Just by having a room, or you have some, I don't know, attitudes?
Well, I guess it's always a kind of curation. In the moment where you decide that you invite an artist, that's the first moment of curation. Then, of course, I mean, the show we're having on now is by American artist Jamie Snyder. We spend over a week being in the gallery from 8 in the morning until 10 at night, and I think we hung 20 different shows. And it's tiny movements where you just say, that doesn't feel right, that feels right, and you move forward slowly. So I don't know how I would define it, but I know galleries which are very strict, who say, I'm only showing painting, or I can't show that because I can't sell it. And in that sense, that's the playground I was talking about.
Julia, could you tell us maybe a little bit more about the way you work with Gärtnergasse, because this is the most, the biggest collective structure, kind of out of the ones that are present here. You have 4 people in your core team. So how would you describe the relations that constitute your work, but also the relations that you build with artists and with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking now, also, like, I think with us, when we talk about connectivity, it's really more like within our space and then the artists and the scene. I don't think we think a lot about, I mean, in like to take action somehow in like connectivity with the other off-space scene. I mean, clearly it's interesting to hear like what people do and how it works, and I mean, in a way that, yeah, just like talking about different topics is interesting, but like what we really work on is more this us and the artists. And I mean, the way we function, and like, it's kind of like, as I said, so each unit is independent in inviting an artist and like making this show, but yet we are somehow a team. And I think for me, somehow it's also nice that this came to be sort of, I say like organically, because it was not intended as like, how do we make this system? And then we thought and like made plans and like came up with it. It came up to be kind of spontaneously so, and I think this is also nice because it also kind of reflects where we stand, and we are just like young student artists, and in a certain extent, I mean, for instance, thinking about like connecting with other off spaces, like the first thing that I thought now listening to you, for instance, was really like, whoa, another thing to do. Like, it's just like, there is generally like a limit to what we can do, and
so somebody should take it over, that's the point.
I mean, sure, maybe
Fernando.
not us, but like, I mean, for us, it's just like at this point, not a major interest, but the interest is really, and I mean, I think like this connectivity also kind of happens like like through the process, it's like, you know, like right now I can like easily reflect upon what has happened in the past, and what has happened in the past is simply like, since there are these 3 units and previously there were also other people involved, like we just get to know the art, like each person involved gets to know the artist that maybe somebody else invited, and I think this is really nice because it somehow broadens up just simply like who can come into play, because obviously not everybody knows all the artists that potentially might come to be invited, and also somehow, yeah, it's in like with the, so being where we are right now, as I've said, this like artists and students, I think it's like a good way of like being able to find more people and meet more people and create connections, other than like having multiple studio visits or going to, I don't know, like fairs or massive exhibitions, something like this. It's just like a different way of doing it from where we are. And I don't know, I mean, I feel like as generally like a young, I mean, yeah, it's like a young space, or we are very like somehow friendly with the people, and they're usually like somewhere peers, like who we invite, so it feels very like, somehow like very, I do feel that we feel very connected, like with each other and with the people, but like, yeah, somehow through like just through these like somehow immediate friendly connections. I don't know, how would I say? I mean, friendly, not necessarily meaning in like we only invite friends, but more as if like it just like feels very like a little bit like what Pina was talking in the beginning. You're just like, you just do like somehow build this friendly connection through talking to art and working closely and just, yeah, like being somehow there for a long time in a space, building a show. Yeah.
Ute, how is it in your case? Because when we visited your space, I had a very strong idea that there's this very convivial atmosphere, and that you also try to go beyond the art audiences and engage kind of local neighborhood to come into the space and to engage in a conversation. How do you do that? Like, how do you build the audience?
Yeah, I think it's was heißt geschuldet?
I'm not the right person for translation.
It's geschuldet, the position of the space, because the Farn is situated in Praterstraße 33, and we are just nearby the Nestroy U1 Aufgang, I don't know in English, and a lot of people are passing by, and human beings are curious, so they are just have the first look, and the next time they will come in, and then they are talking about, oh no, I have no idea about art, and then the third time they come and they said, wow, we start to like it and to love it, and we are in a let's say somehow bad position, because we have no toilets, we have no water there, and so we have to be in contact with our neighbors. They have toilets and they have water. It's really something, yeah, somehow stupid aspect, but it creates a kind of community. So and we really love it, because we have not only this typical art scene audience.
And I have a question which is actually a question to all of you, but maybe I will start with Wolfgang, because you already used this word of a pond, and I was wondering if you would imagine the local art scene as a pond, what animal would you be? Would your art space be? It's also a question like to ask, like, in other words, how do you see your work in regard to the work of other spaces and institutions which are present and working in Vienna?
My first question would be, which animal is the Kunsthalle in this pond?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a funny picture that
it's an Adler.
We can develop.
They have this Adler.
Adler, you of course you're looking up from down, and then you can hunt a little bit in the pond. I don't know. It's. I thought maybe because I'm prepared for the question, because it was in. I thought there is an Australian frog.
A poison frog?
No, the frog. First, I thought about this frog because it has. It's growing up its children in the stomach, and then they come out of the mouth, which I found quite nice. But then I found out it's already extincted, and it's so maybe a dragonfly would be also a nice animal. It's not so much community related, but you can fly like the adler also, and you can even move backwards, and you can stand into the air. I don't know. It's a strange question, and you can only expect strange answers.
I was just thinking there's this new creature from the Star Trek, Star Wars, the new creature, the pork. Yeah, maybe it will be that one, the newest thing that is with
which creature do you mention?
Pork. It's for the new Star Wars released in December. Yeah, something like that.
This mixture in between human and pork, or what? No.
Screams very loud.
I thought we're the baby frog. I forgot what's it called. Like before it becomes a real frog. Tadpole. Thank you. And then I thought we're pink. We're a pink tadpole.
A pink one.
Yeah.
Why pink?
Because just like it's a young animal and there are many of them, and then it's just like a distinct color. It's like one of many, but you can differentiate. Like special, but not too special.
I did study molecular biology a very long time ago. I was thinking, I don't even know if this exists, but I think Gianni Manhattan would probably be a kind of underwater mushroom, a kind of fungus. So it's something in between both, It's not an animal, it's not a plant really, because it's also like, I'm doing a gallery, but I'm also doing a publishing program. So they're two different things and they kind of go alongside each other. But we're also going to have books that will not be in line with the shows we're doing. So I think it's something that's somehow in between and neither or.
Okay. Ute, would you also like to answer this question?
Yeah, I don't know the name in English of libelle. You know that?
I already took it over.
Yes, I would like to be fun put it as a dragonfly, because I think that dragonflies don't eat other animals. No?
Oh, they do.
They do.
Actually, they are
but they're nice.
Hunters. They are hunters. They're quite aggressive. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Let's go back to serious questions. Not that the other one was not serious. Fernando, I would like to ask you, because you've been running the space already for a few years now, and you also enabled quite a big body of work that was produced. And I wanted to ask you, how do you relate to this body of work, and what are your thoughts on authorship? How do you see your role within this production process that you are initiating?
I think we have a very free structure. We really trust in all the artists that we invite, and we give them completely freedom. Authorship, it belongs to them in whatever they want to do and produce. And we don't, let's say, we really are not part of the process, of the creative process. We really give them all the freedom to do whatever they want. So I think that we allow lots of things to happen. Of course, during the production and during the process, there's lots of discussions in between, but not that we are, let's say, controlling the direction of whatever kind of creative process that they are involved with. We let things happen. Basically, it's our motto somehow, and we like those things like that they are really responsible and do what they really would like to do, and we just try to plug and incite things to happen the way they want things to happen, and that is what we are trying to contagiate them. Yeah.
And Laura, how is it in your case? Is it also maybe a bit different in if you are a gallery? If you enable a production of work, how do you deal with kind of authorship?
I don't claim any authorship at all. No, I'm actually very in line with Fernando. It's very similar somehow that you invite someone and the Vorbereitung, preparations, they differ. Some artists want to be left alone and work alone. And again, with the example of Jamie, we started our dialogue a year ago, and we had weekly and bi-weekly Skype meetings where we really tried to get to the core of what she wanted to work on. And for whatever reasons, he was very keen on my input. So we had a similar research interest. So it was just a beautiful exchange for over a year, and other artists are just. I try to give them as much freedom as I possibly can in doing the shows that they want to do.
Okay.
Yes, I think it's almost the same. It's also like we try to be as supportive as we can for our artists, and what we expect is like in a kind of dialogue happening between us, but more in a general way. That what we want to take out of the situations is like to have an artist-artist dialogue with our artists, and to gain something we can also use for ourselves as a kind of knowledge and experience, and then they are also totally free to do something, and inside these formats we want to develop. And yeah, I think usually alternative spaces, they try not to put too much pressure on the artists.
Yeah, I mean, also pretty similar. Like, we definitely, the authorship belongs to the artists, and we want to give them as much as freedom as possible, space, time, money.
Maybe I would just now specify a little bit the question in your case, because you're also an artist yourself.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of negotiate this balance between your own work and on the other hand, kind of running the space? Do you see there a differentiation, or are there for you two different things, or is it a kind of, do you see it also as one kind of practice?
Well, I mean, rather two different things. I mean, not like super different, obviously, but definitely not as like, I don't see running a space as my art practice in any way. And I mean, I guess on one hand, like, I think the main concern is somehow, like for this question, the time. And time somehow works pretty good because we have the structure that we have, so that it's like, as I've mentioned so many times, these 3 units inviting people. So basically, when it's not a show that Julia Znoi and me make, then I kind of have a lot of time, so it's pretty manageable. And I mean, they inform each other in the sense that on one hand, the initial idea to run a space, for me personally, was very much related to like kind of like a learning process, as many have already mentioned. And also because, for instance, in the class I used to be, like somehow there was not so much talk about really putting up a show, and this was something that I felt like I had kind of little contact to. So somehow, obviously, like inviting people and running a space for my art works in that way. And also, obviously, since you have a very intense dialogue with somebody, like you just get to know how they think and what's happening, and I mean, it's always good for your own art. And in the other way around, that somehow like, yeah, I mean, I just guess like obviously people you invite are like close to what you're interested in, or there is some kind of interest related to the practice that you, maybe not necessarily the theme, but say like, I don't know now, but anyway, so there's always some aspect that is relating to to being an artist. So somehow they are definitely like close to each other, but I think it's really like I think differently about them, you know, and also like how much time I spend, what do I want. Somehow it's like those are sort of two activities, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Uta, how do you negotiate like the time and like the balance between your work, your professional work as an architect? Am I right? Yes.
Yes, I'm an architect in doing urban research, but in the moment, or let's say since the last 2 years, my main focus was on this working with or for fun, and. But as an architect, I have this, let's say, maybe point of view from a little bit outside. I'm no artist, and I was learning a lot the last 2.5 years, let's say, and now I have lost the line. What was the question?
How do you balance like in time management? Like how do you connect your professional work?
We are working a lot with national and international platforms, like for example Daily Lazy. They're Greek artists living in a kind of diaspora. Some of them living in New York, in Paris, in London. And we have a strong theme for 1 year. It's for the next year, and maybe that's a good example for how we are working. It's this sentence from Charcot. He was a teacher of Freud. He said, I would try to translate it, la théorie est bon, but not everything fits in. It's something we are trying to avoid free spaces, let's say like that.
Mm-hmm. And I also wanted to ask you before you said that you actually think that this model where there are so many dispersed small spaces is something that you think should stay or maybe should grow, should proliferate more.
Yes.
And
I think so.
I'm wondering why do you like why do you think this is, for example, better than having a sort of a critical mass that connects and forms something bigger?
Because I think that we are nowadays living in a society on which the public space is going more and more in privacy. It's run by capital, and we need more and more spaces in which you could be without forced to consume things. And for that case, I think it's very important to have these off spaces.
Okay. I would maybe at this point open up to the questions from the audience. Would anyone like to ask a question? Okay. Do you have questions to each other? No? Okay, I wanted to...
I just would like to say, because I think one of your questions was how should these off spaces growing up, would they like to become these institutional spaces like Kunsthalle, for example? Or are they just, in that case, just like copycats? I think that's it's for me it would be important to point out that these off spaces has not to be copycats of this institutional.
I think I never even thought of a word copycat in connection to off spaces, but it's interesting that you bring that up. No, what I meant with this question is actually less the growth, but more the kind of a need to create what we talked about, like also in the previous panel, and was what Laura was referring to, a kind of need to create maybe closer partnerships or collaborations, or kind of more of a network that could be useful or helpful when it comes to some aspects, like financial aspects, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
It would be also good not to see this on a pragmatic level, or just on a pragmatic level. I think it would be also interesting, like, to talk about if there is a general discourse or things, aspects in common in these spaces, and to develop things, yeah, not to be like just. Usually, it's like that. There is a lot of artists like traveling from one space to the other, and then. And it's also at the openings, sometimes you don't have so much talks about the works itself. It seems to be like kind of social islands with different scenes, sometimes overlapping and so on. And I would find it quite interesting, like to open up like a general discourse about what you started. For example, why people starting these kind of spaces? What is their how do they see, like, what is alternative? Yeah, why do we need alternative structures now, especially when everybody has the feeling that the art world itself is like, or the art is drifting apart, and it's hard, like, to keep the classical categories between, yeah. And I think that for me there's a need, like, of having this discourse also in between the art spaces, and I'm waiting that somebody will, like, starting this, because I also have no capacities to take this over. But it could be starting on a very easy level, and what should happen is, like, to visit, like, the exhibitions of the other spaces, for example, like all the people running spaces should be, and also the Kunsthalle people, they should also visit the exhibitions, and to generate already on that level a kind of exchange, yeah, to open these islands a little bit that are all here in Vienna, and at the end there will be, maybe there was a time with like 40 off spaces, and in the future there are only 10 off spaces because of financial reasons, and then what is left behind, yeah, out of this, yeah.
And do you know how many off spaces are existing in Vienna? Somehow
they told it's around.
We counted 40 right now.
Only 40. Okay.
Only?
Yeah.
It was like 40. Yes,
Big city somehow.
Without galleries. Yeah.
Without galleries. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Any? Yes.
Yeah, so the question is about the funding of your different spaces. Obviously, coming from the government, both national and from the city, and with the elections coming up and the situation being the situation that it is, are you worried at all for the future of your funding of your spaces?
Yes, always.
Yeah, always now, but now you have, you know, Social Democrats who are leading a government that is rather culture friendly. Imagine if you have an FPÖ Minister of Culture, which is a ministry that I'm imagining the ÖVP would give away pretty easily. How do you see any alternatives? Should there be a substantial cut in funding?
I think we cannot start already making provisions of what will happen if whatever thing will happen. I think that is not because just we don't know what will be.
Yeah, but it's very soon.
It's very soon, but you just don't know what are their policies regarding culture to a certain extent that you don't know how those things will somehow involve us as active of spaces asking for some support and so on. You really don't know, or let's say I don't know. So I would say that personally I would leave that question to a different time, and if that negative scenario would happen, I think if you really want to keep on doing what you are doing, I think we will find ways of supporting ourselves to keep on doing what we are doing.
I mean, there's a funny situation in Vienna. I think funding-wise is like a lot of spaces are mainly funded by the government, and the funding of the city of Vienna, it's in comparison, it's much lower. Yeah? And actually, it should be the other way around. Like,
sorry, in comparison to what?
In the funding of the city of Vienna, of the Viennese government, most of the spaces are funded by the state government and not by the city. Yeah? And actually it should be the other way around, that the main funding comes from the city, and then you have like the extra for international projects, for example, from the government. And this makes it also much more vulnerable in terms of the elections coming up. Yeah, it could easily happen that in 1 year there's only a third of the spaces, and then it's of course it's a question of the motivation also, and how independent your space is from that funding.
But I think it's also, I mean, from again, not from a publicly funded standing point. The thing we also see all over Europe and America, there are constant waves of gallery closing, especially for young galleries. And I think it was mentioned earlier, I think with Vincenzo, that we need to find other models. And I think one also in the face of drastic budget cuts could be to think about space sharing solutions. I mean, it's we have 40 project spaces, and it's somehow weird that no one ever thought of like combining them, centralizing them. And I'm not talking about startup warehouses filled with young people eager to gentrify whole areas. I'm rather talking about finding places that you can use together, that you can find a program that you can rotate, that you share also, again, what I said earlier, you share your resources, your knowledges, in my case, the collector bases. But I think it's something, and I'm afraid I'm with Karim. I mean, I'm super scared of the elections. We do live a little bit in a Schlaraffenland here, because I lived in London before, and my partner lived in Paris before, and we have so much, even though we talk about precarity, but given in comparison to other cities, we do have a lot of money, and that might be taken. So I think something to think about is actually to think of inhabiting a space as a common, and really of like thinking of sharing things, sharing the bills, splitting it, working together, living together somehow. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I think it's a really good line to finish this panel. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us. And we're going to move towards the next panel, the politics of exhibition making, in 5 minutes, or should we? In 5 minutes. Thank you.